So let's talk about, which is seems to be an important thing in the trucking business, is home time. How is home time at Stevens? Right? How often do you get home time, and so on and so forth. Um, so you get home time, you get like a day for every week, uh, which is, from what I've saw, is the minimum that you have to get, the bare minimum that you have to get, with trucking and stuff like that, is you have to get at least a day for every week that you're out. Meaning that if you're out for a month, you get 4 days, 6 weeks, you get 6 days. Now, with home time with Stevens, you can only take, I believe, 5 days at a time. So you can't take no more than 5 days at a time, right? So even if you was out for 2 months, which means 8 weeks, 8 days, technically you're only supposed to get, only able to take 5 of those days. Now with that, however many days you take, because I would have, a couple of days saved. Let's say if I had like 5 days, right, and I would go home for maybe 3. What I find would happen is they'll take all 5 of my days. Like, I'll come back and all 5 of my days will be gone, and you'll have to call your DM. And then there's another department my DM told me to call, and then they was like, "Nah, you need to speak to your DM about it." So make sure with that if you have a certain amount of days, but you only take a portion of those days, make sure you look on there and you see that they didn't take all your days, because they will try and take like all your days. So yeah, you get a week, or you get a day for every week that you're out, which is, I've seen places where they've offered you 2 days for every week that you're out, which is double that, or at least a day and a half for every day that you're out. So they're definitely only lower end, but that seems to be a lot of places to be the minimum or the standard, I guess, as far as what a lot of companies offer as far as home time. Now, when I was training, or when I was in my grad phase, which is where you do your 240 hours. Once you do your 240 hours, you come back, test out, get your own truck. And then for, I think it's 90 days. For 90 days, you're basically in grad phase, which is where, they limit where you go and stuff like that, just so you can kind of get used to being by yourself. Now, when I was in grad phases, and I've talked to several other drivers there too, in grad phase, there was no problem getting home, right? It was no problem getting home, meaning you put in, because they want you to put it in, I think, at least 10 days in advance or something like that. So, but I would just say 2 weeks just to be sure. Of course, stuff happens, and if something happens, then let them know, and I can still try to get you home. But yeah, I think it's like 10 days. You have to put in 10 days, because if you don't put it in 10 days, when you try to put it in, let's say 4 days from the day, it's going to come back, it's going to reject it. And then at that point, you got to talk to your DM, and they can approve it, but you just got to talk to your DM and let them know. So like I said, when I was in the grad phase, no problem. Like, I'll get home, no problem. No problem, right? No problem finding loads to get me home. None of that. Right. Even sometimes I get home like a day or so early, maybe even 2 days earlier than what I had requested. Now, once you get out of grad, for some mysterious reason that is difficult, or more on the difficult side, a lot harder than when you were in grad phase, to get home. Because I had several experiences to where, so I put my time in a month in advance, because I would stay out, 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks if I have something that I know that's coming up, But yeah, I would be out at least 4 to 6 weeks at a time, So I'll put it in. Because you put in, you come off your vacation, your time off. And it'll ask you a rough estimate to put in a rough estimate as far as when you're going to be out again. So you put that in, let's say 4 weeks, from that day, or 6 weeks, or 3 weeks from that day, however long. You put that in, bam, course it. Now, I do recommend taking a picture of that. Because it'll send you a message saying, your request for such and such has been basically approved. So I would recommend taking a picture of that, because you can go back in your notes or in your messages, right? But I mean, if you're getting a whole bunch of messages or loads, it's gonna be way at the top by the time it's time for you, or the week before you go home or take your home time. It's gonna be way at the top. So I recommend taking pictures of it, so let them know if it is some BS. That here's the picture, right? Here's the picture documentation showing that ask for this day off or these days off on this day. Now, home time. Once you pass the 90 days, and I think it's 90 days. I did my 90 days quicker because I got more miles. So I forgot the number of miles that you had to do to basically get out of the grad phase. But I finished mine well before, I think, the 3 months or something like that. So anyway, once you get out of grad phase, you put your time in, so on and so forth. Now, the problems that I have, right, is the fact that you put your time in a month in advance, month and a half in advance, however long. And one thing you want to do is that week before, because I'm on the East Coast, so the week before, they should start routing you. If you're on the West Coast, let's say, they should start routing you to the East, because it's not a car. You only have technically 11 hours to drive each day. So if you're coming from California to the East Coast, it's gonna take you a few days to actually get to the East Coast. So, if you have time scheduled for, let's say Friday, today's Monday, and let's say you have time on Friday, you need to already be heading home. We needed to be headed home like last Friday, because you want to make sure that you make it there in time, especially if you got stuff that's going on, doctor's appointments, whatever it is. Make sure you get there. But what I've seen is the week before, right? So it may be the Thursday before. Let's say it'll be next Friday. Let's say today's Thursday. And next Friday, not tomorrow, but the next Friday is the Friday that I'm going home, right? Just finished dropping off a load. What they'll do is, or what happened to me quite a bit, what used to happen to me quite a bit was, I'll be on the East Coast or the Midwest, somewhere like that, and then it'll be a load going to California, and I'm like, and you got to do the calculations in your head. It's like, if this load got to be delivered on, let's say, Monday, Tuesday, I drop that load off, there's no way I'm going to be able to get to California to the West Coast, or to the East Coast within 2 days, within 3 days. It's impossible with a clock, right? Now, if you're doing paper logs, especially being governed, you're not going to be able to make it, So they would start sending me to California. And so I remember I told my DM, one of the first times that it happened, was like, look, I got, home time next week. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to drop this load off in California on Monday and be able to make it to the house by Friday. So they'll tell you, and this is what they'll do. They'll tell you, oh, well, we'll get it repowered, right? We'll get it repowered. So it's like, okay. So I did that one time, right? Repowered, and they were supposed to contact me, let me know about the repower. So you pick it up the load. They'll tell you that we just need to pick up the load and just start heading there, and then we'll get somebody to repower you. So I picked up the load. I think it was like a Thursday or something. I picked up that load, right? I think it was like that Thursday, somewhere around there. So then, you drive, And they said that Friday, I think I called them to see, about the repower. They said they're going to check on the repower, blah, blah. They're checking on the repower. They're working on the repower. And you'll get a message stating that somebody's working on the repower or that we received a repower. But that's basically just an automated message. That doesn't really mean that somebody's really working on your repower per se. It means that they have it in the system that you requested a repower, but there's not really, there is, but there isn't somebody necessarily working on your repower, right? Now, and the thing about the repowers is, now, if you're repowering because you're running out of time and you're not going to make it that low on time, oh yeah, they're going to repower you. But if you're trying to repower and get home, because like I said, they were working on their repower come Friday. Come Saturday, and then you already know weekend shift. You don't want to work. You don't want to talk to weekend shift. You don't want to talk to night shift because all of them have attitudes. It's like, it's not my fault you're working the weekends. It's not my fault you're working nights. Like, we work 14-hour days, basically 365 days a year. So what are you complaining about? But anyway, so they were saying that, because I talked to the actual person, because I think it was like a Tyson load or something I was taking. It was some type of, I took to the meat department. So she was saying, yeah, she received it, but she wasn't, quote, able to find anybody to repower the load, right? Now, keep in mind, it's been like a day and a half, somewhere around them, that they've been working on this repower. So I'm like, well, I was told I was getting this repower, and because I got stuff at home that I got to do, right? So she told me that, yeah, you should have never took this load. And I talked to another guy who transferred me to her. He's like, yeah, you should have never took this load. I'm like, okay, but they said they were going to repower me. So keep that in mind. So, long story short, never got a repower. It was in California. In California, and I had to be home that week. Because I dropped it off, I think, Monday or something. And I had to be home in like 3 days, or need to be home in like 3 days. There's no way you can make that. So, what they did is they will fly you, right? They will fly you to the house, right? So, you'll drop that load. You'll take the truck and the trailer to, because in California, they do have like a drop yard or like a yard where not only them, but it's several other places, other companies that have a place where you can leave your trailer and leave your truck and all that. But see, the thing about that is, with that particular situation, I dropped off that load, went to like the nearest truck stop, but then I had to go down to southern California, right? Because if you ever been in California, you got the north, you got the middle, and then you got the south. So I had to drive 3.5, maybe 4 hours to get to this location to secure this daggone truck, right? And I'm not even gonna get into the fact that my truck kind of broke down, but luckily it was able to get fixed within a day, and I was still able to, get to the crib. Because I changed my flight. My flight was scheduled for one day, but I ended up, because I already knew truck breaking down, being stupid. So let me go ahead and just change this flight for the next day. Hopefully this truck will be fixed by that day. And I'll just fly out. So it worked out. But ended up still having to drive 3-4 hours to get to the spot to secure their truck. All right. So that was the first instance. The second instance, it was another time. Same thing. I was on the East Coast week before, right? Trying to send me to California again, right? Because they'll send, basically being new, they'll send you to California. They'll give you the miles to go to California. They'll send you the miles to go to California. So they're trying to send me to California this time, right? Because I spoke to other people. They was like, yeah, I just denied a load, right? Because I've never denied a load. But I denied it because I even talked to my DM beforehand and told him, like, look, man, I got a home time next week. Like, what's up? So he's like, same thing he told me before. Was just pick it up or just accept it. Or no, he says accept it and then we'll work on getting you another load. It's like, nah, I'm not falling for that no more because you already told me I was going to get repowered for it and I never got a repower. So I denied it, right? So then he called me, I think, like the next day and said, hey, they said that you denied this load. I was like, yeah, I got home time next week. So there's no way I'm going to be able to make it, or I'm not going to go based off what y'all told me or what y'all are telling me. Nothing against you, but I'm not going to be like, oh, it's going to get repowered. Like the last load or like the last home time where I was told it's going to get repowered and it never got repowered. And it's cool that you want to fly me home, but then flying compared to driving is still more of a hassle to me anyway, because you're having to do that every single time instead of just being able to find you a load, you know, to get to the house. And somehow, miraculously, when I would go home and there's a place I would secure my truck, there would be other Stevens trucks there. So it's like, how is it so hard to get me a load to the house and there's other Stevens trucks here? Then on top of that is the fact that when I was in grad, there was never a problem finding me a load to go home. But now all of a sudden, it's hard for me to get a load home, which is BS, right? Which is BS. So that's how home time can kind of work with Stevens. From my experience, not only from my experiences, but from several other people that I've talked to, that grad is cool, you get home, but once you get out that grad, like, there is no, quote, guaranteed home time. Even though you worked for 4 to 6 weeks, made them how much ever, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, but then once it's time for you to go home, there's no loads to be able to be found. Now, may be different, you know, for other people, but the people that I've talked to, and maybe it was because we were on the newer side, we had problems getting loads to go home. We had problems getting home. So just take that, take that information and use it as is. Like I said, I always check the week before you're supposed to go home, right? You need to stay, if you stay on the West Coast, you need to be going towards the West, or you need to be staying on the West, or at least you need to be in the Midwest. If you're on the East Coast that week before, you need to be on the East Coast and Midwest. There is no going to California. If you're on the West Coast, there is no going to New York. There is no going to PA, because you're not going to be able to make it home on Monday and your time is Friday from PA to California, or PA to Utah, wherever you're at on the West Coast. You're not going to be able to make it there, right, within 2 days, 3 days. And like I said, if you don't mind flying, and that's cool, but flying become a hassle. Even though I got the TSA joint and I skipped the line and all that, it still is like you have to gather up the stuff. You have to get an Uber. You have to catch a Lyft or Uber, which they pay you back for it. You have to get a Lyft and an Uber to get there, right? Then you have to get there 2 hours ahead of your actual flight, just to be sure, which you should do. You have to wait on that flight. You have to get on that flight. You have to fly, which is cool. You don't have to drive, but you fly. Then you have to drop off. Then you get home, do what you need to do. Then keep in mind, when you get home, you gotta still get somebody to drop you off. Then you still gotta fly. Then you still gotta catch a Lyft or Uber to get back to your truck. It becomes somewhat of a hassle compared to just